I should transition to the podcast because a lot of people obviously know you because of the podcast, Los Culturistas, on top of the other work that you have a chance to do. Talk about how you feel like either your comedy or even your hosting abilities have evolved since starting the podcast, because clearly people look to you as a host now because you've been a host for several years.
Yeah. So it's so interesting the way that sort of it's all panning out, because when I was coming up in my 20s, like grinding, doing comedy in New York, I was very much a sketch actor, very much doing that, like did a lot of improv. And I always thought, I would be known as an actor one day. And then Bowen and I just started to do this podcast because we literally were like, let's schedule a play date for ourselves, 90 minutes a week. We're best friends. Like, we'll talk about pop culture, whatever, shoot the shit. It'll just be us. No one's going to listen to it. And I think that as a result of thinking no one would listen to it, we were comfortable and we were ourselves, and our relationship and our personalities were able to come through because we just weren't thinking about its consumption, because we were positive it wouldn't be consumed. So I think the way that it's changed what I do, and maybe the way I'm perceived, quote unquote, is that it just made me more comfortable being myself. Because as you know, being a queer person, like, sure, you come out of the closet when you're whatever age, but then it is a process after that of coming out as your real personality, coming out with your point of view, coming out with your opinions. And that takes time. So I think that honestly, what I had been doing comedically and creatively in my career wasn't really me until I was able to get on the podcast and really find myself in those conversations with my friend and people that we would have on as guests. And then it just opened me up to, oh, people might actually want to hear what I have to say. Maybe my point of view can strengthen my comedy. And so when we started the podcast, when I was 25, 26 years old, that actually came at the perfect time because I was ready to be seen and heard for who I was. So it's made everything easier because I'm confident that that people will want to hear what I have to say. Maybe.
So because we are dog lover friends now, and because we've already developed this connection, I feel like I can ask you this question. I think it's very specific to gay podcasters, gay male podcasters,
Okay.
not even TV show hosts, because I think that's different when we see our voices matched with our faces, like we see ourselves as who we are.
Yeah.
I have always had a thing about my voice, and I don't know if that's because of the whole gay voice thing. I don't know if it's just, I feel like every gay man has had a relationship with their voice. And because for us podcasters, because for us radio hosts, it's very specific because that's all you hear. You don't see our faces, you don't see anything. It's just our voices. Have you had like a weird relationship with your voice through the course of doing the podcast?
Yes.
And like, if you could just talk about that a little bit.
It's so interesting. It definitely is. I think no one likes their voice, but I am not going to say it's not because it's like a queer sort of awareness of yourself. Because for so many years, I don't know how you were programmed, but for me, it was like, when I was growing up and I'm from Long Island, like everyone dropped their voice. Like you can hear like Zac Efron doing it now. You know what I mean? Like, I don't believe he actually talks like this. I just don't think it's his voice. And I hear like my little cousin doing it. And I'm like, I want to tell him like, it's actually healthier for you to speak with a resonator. Okay. But for me, it's like hearing my voice when I get a little excited, I do get a little loud and I get a little nasal. And I get a little gay. I get very gay. I mean, that's who I am. And I think that honestly, just hearing myself and getting used to myself was another way to get to know myself and stop disliking myself so much. It because there's nothing really wrong with it. It's kind of like when you see yourself in the mirror and you're like, I'm good. And then you see yourself in the picture later and you're like, what? No. But then you realize like that's just who you are. And it takes a minute to get used to it. So I guess that is a reason why I'm happy to have the podcast, because I know if I didn't, I might still hate the sound of my own voice. And sometimes people will even be like, oh my God, I love your guys' podcast. Bowen, your voice is so soothing. And I'll be like, you know what? I actually like it because he does have a very soothing, chocolatey voice. And mine is more the highs and the lows. But that's who I am as a person. And I'm not bummed about it. It's just who I am.
And as a listener, it's a very good compliment. You all compliment each other because of the way your voices sound.
Thank you.
I think it's also such a wonderful archive, like for us to be able to have about our queerness, like to hear what we sounded like when we first started doing the production work or the programming work we do to now.